We both do work for Cake Wallet. Cake Wallet's a non-custodial open source wallet. Today we want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin privacy, like what Bitcoin is good at, what you can do to solve some privacy issues that exist on Bitcoin. And Henry will be talking about extending that into digital privacy in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right, so obviously, we all know what Bitcoin is. At least I think we do. There's a lot of new people that came to this conference talking to us. They didn't know what Bitcoin is. But I think everyone here, for the most part, understands what Bitcoin is and generally understands how it works. But there are a lot of misconceptions about Bitcoin's use around involving privacy, especially. Bitcoin is a very powerful tool, as Bitcoin is a much more hard sovereign currency than the disgusting fiat that we've all come to hate. But Bitcoin is not without its own problems, for sure. And so one of those problems especially is in regards to privacy. Bitcoin is good. It really is pretty good as a store of value. I think we've seen that given the fact that it's like $84,000 for one Bitcoin. I mean, that's insane. That just shows that there are a lot of people that care about Bitcoin, and there's a lot of people storing wealth on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is reasonably sovereign if you use it non-custodially. Bitcoin is going to be very, very hard to confiscate if you have the keys to your coins or if you're using a cold wallet. That's something you're not going to get from a bank account at all or any central financial system. It's, of course, a harder currency. It has a hard cap, and it's got a set amount that's created every 10 minutes. So can't just be printing trillions of dollars worth of Bitcoin a day like the Federal Reserve. However, Bitcoin, by default, is not so good at privacy and transactional privacy. We'll get into that a little bit. So Bitcoin, unfortunately, is not that private by default. It's not very fungible. I know a lot of people will say that Bitcoin is fungible. Unfortunately, it's really not that fungible. It's not private, and it is very traceable. When you use Bitcoin just on the layer one, just normally on-chain transactions, everything you do on there is fully transparent. It's a public ledger. That's just how it works. That's how it was created. If I were to send you $5 worth of Bitcoin and you would give me your Bitcoin address, I could effectively take your address, look it up on a blockchain explorer, and see how much Bitcoin that address currently has attached to it. And if I then go ahead and send you $5 worth of Bitcoin, or like 0.0001 BTC, that transaction is stored on the ledger indefinitely, and all the details regarding that transaction, what address it came from, what address it went to, and the amount as well, is totally public and totally viewable by literally anyone. And that might be not so much of a problem if you use Bitcoin pseudonymously, right? So like you use it in a way that it's not tied to your identity. That might not be a big deal to you. If you use it peer-to-peer, it's totally fine. But as soon as you do something that links that Bitcoin address or wallet in general to your identity, every single other output that you've used from that address could also be linked to you irrevocably. And so we're looking at ways that we can try to avoid that permanent record of linking your identity to everything. And sometimes it doesn't matter as much. Sometimes it's not as big of a deal. But Bitcoin, in a sense, in some ways, is worse than using a traditional financial system, like your credit card. At least your credit card, your buddy can't just look up your credit card number on a credit card chain explorer and see all of your funds. That's just not a thing. Just because you sent them a few dollars, or if you used Venmo, or if you used PayPal to send them money, they can't see all of your money just because you sent them something. On Bitcoin, the way it works by default, unfortunately, that's the case to a large degree. And so we're going to talk about, one, for why you should care, which is a couple of the reasons I just went over, is because that chain analysis can be used, and it will be used to try and trace funds, to trace your transactions, to see where you're spending your money. And that might not concern you that much, but this is going to be done to make people criminals in the future for things they're doing now. That's totally fine, totally legal. You could be spending your money in ways or using Bitcoin in ways today that's totally fine within the law, totally acceptable. In the future, maybe they're like, oh, there's this really large transactions that you made that they're able to link to you because you had this wallet connected to a KYC exchange that, you didn't pay some taxes there, right? And maybe they change the rules on that and they decide to retroactively go after you for something like that. Or maybe you bought something, right? Maybe you bought some product that during the time was totally legal, totally okay, and in the future it turns out they decide to change the law on that, so they retroactively go after you for that. So there's a couple examples of why I think financial privacy is really important, and I think people should have a right to be able to protect how they spend their money. Like, you should be able to spend your money how you want to. And the reality is that Bitcoin today is, to a degree, censored. There are Bitcoin addresses that are OFAC sanctioned. And if you send Bitcoin to one of these addresses, your wallet will become what's called tainted. And then if you ever try to spend your Bitcoin on a service that complies with these OFAC sanctions, you will not be able to. So Bitcoin, in a way, is censorable. Now, once again, if you're hardcore and you're sticking to using it strictly peer-to-peer, you won't have a problem with this. But as soon as you branch out into anything that might be more compliant or use more centralized systems, you're going to run into problems. So what are some of the ways that you can make Bitcoin private? So privacy on Bitcoin has had a bit of a rough history. It's in an interesting state. However, there are some exciting newer features that have come out recently that will allow you to have a fair amount of privacy on Bitcoin. It's definitely not a silver bullet. But obviously, one of the first things you want to do if you're trying to maintain serious privacy in Bitcoin is avoid KYC, avoid exchanges. This obviously is a lot easier said than done. I'm sure most people here has bought probably most of their Bitcoin on like Coinbase, right? Fully KYC'd exchange. If you're a more advanced user, you probably have used peer-to-peer exchanges, ones that don't involve KYC, ones that are decentralized. Those ones can be harder to use. Oftentimes, you won't be able to simply just use your credit card or link a bank account. But that is the number one thing. If you want to avoid linking your identity to all of your Bitcoin and all of your funds, you just got to avoid KYC, man. Address reusing. This is probably something that is the most annoying thing in Bitcoin, to be honest. If you use Bitcoin the way that the majority of people do if they want to preserve any amount of privacy, usually people will always generate a new address every time you receive to try and keep those funds separated from each other. That is a good thing to do to maintain some separation of outputs in your wallet, but it can be very annoying, and there is a solution we have for that. So coin control, once again, talking about separating outputs. You can use coin control to try to limit the amount of outputs that can be linked to you directly. So if you have one wallet and you have an address that you receive from Coinbase, you might not want to spend those coins with other coins you've received from something else that is not linked to you directly. And you can use coin control to avoid that. And of course, we're going to be talking specifically about silent payments and Payjoin, which are a couple new features that we have within our own wallet. And then Lightning. Lightning can be used to definitely gain a decent amount of more privacy than on L1, but Lightning comes with lots of other catches and definitely isn't as easy to use as L1 Bitcoin. And of course, you can also even use other privacy chains to hold your funds for a while and then send it back into Bitcoin to try and separate it from the original source a little bit. So let's get into silent payments a bit more specifically. So silent payments, or BIP 352, it was created by Ruben Thompson. It was proposed a few years ago. It ended up becoming its own BIP. And silent payments is a really clever way, but actually relatively simple way to prevent you from needing to generate a new address every time you want to receive funds while maintaining a high level of privacy as if you had generated a new address every single time. And this didn't require any actual changes to the Bitcoin protocol or any I don't think it required any Bitcoin core updates. This works pretty much entirely client-side and uses Taproot. It uses existing Taproot addresses on-chain to provide this feature. So how this feature works, well, I'll get into the pros and cons, I guess, real quick. So silent payments is very good privacy with initial contact on-chain. So silent payments doesn't require any initial contact at all. There's been some things in the past like Paynims that requires an initial on-chain contact with the other person. And that can sort of give up some of that privacy and chain analysis can see that you have been in contact with this person on chain or this particular address in chain. You have to make a transaction to them. Silent payments is a very good user experience. You don't have to do really anything on your side except for use a unique address, a new address type, and you have to do client-side scanning on the wallet itself. So that we'll get into in just a little bit here. And so the downsides is that transaction scanning can be a little bit expensive. The client does have to scan all the blocks to know what address belongs to it on chain, because silent payments, when you send, when the client sends to a silent payments address, basically what it does is it generates a unique one-time address on chain that it derives using a specific equation using the public key of that silent payments address. And what that allows you to do is that it allows the client to, while scanning blocks, can see which one of these taproot addresses belong to it. Unfortunately, that does require, it's a bit resource intensive on the device itself. It does require some work the device has to do. And unfortunately, like client support is not ideal. This could be expanded out to, like, let's say an Electrum server doing the scanning work for you. But unfortunately, that would kind of take away some of the benefits of the privacy itself and then put it on the scanning server. So depending on what you want to do that not depends on your priorities, if it's convenience and speed or if it's maximal privacy. So here's how sending actually works, like I just explained a minute ago. Sending is pretty simple. You get a silent payments address on Cake Wallet itself or on a wallet that supports silent payments. The receiver will give the sender the silent payments address. The sender will use this particular equation. It's going to derive a unique one-time taproot address that shows up on chain using this equation, using the input keys for the outputs, and then using the public key from the receiver's silent payments address. And once you do that, the receiver will be able to receive, basically doing the opposite. It's going to check all the blocks, and it's going to check to see if any of these outputs contain the key that it's allowed to use. So, there we go. So from Cake Wallet itself, this is really easy to do. It's really easy to receive silent payments or turn on. This is how you enable silent payments. From the main screen, all you have to do is just enable it from a Bitcoin wallet. Sorry, these screenshots are a little hard to see on this projector. You can enable it from the balance card. You just turn it on, and then it's going to switch to a silent payments server.
Maybe you can turn on the light.
Which, is it this one over here?
Most likely, it's fine.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh.
Wow. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's a lot better. It's a lot easier. And then if you want to actually get your silent payments address you can send to somebody, from the receive screen of the wallet itself, you would just tap there that says, the top part there that says receive. Then you would select silent payments address. As you can see, it's selected now. And on here you see it has a TSP1 address. That's a testnet address. For you, this is Cake Wallet. Cake Wallet, yep. That's right, that's right. This will just be an SP1 address for the mainnet. But as you can see here, this was a testnet transaction I did quite a long time ago. On chain, it shows up as just a standard taproot transaction. So Chainalysis doesn't even know that you use silent payments because this new address type is only on the client side. It doesn't show up on chain at all, which is kind of cool. And it eliminates that possibility that they could censor people just for using silent payments because it's just a standard taproot transaction, nothing else, nothing more really. So Payjoin is also something that is not currently in the app, but we're adding it very, very soon. So Payjoin is pretty cool because it kind of breaks that typical expectation that was set by Satoshi in that funds will go from one address to another. It breaks this typical heuristic and tries to kind of make it confusing where those funds are exactly going. So instead of just you sending your outputs to another user, so you're sending some Bitcoin to someone else, both people will contribute funds themselves and then spread it back out to other unique addresses that they both own. So this is pretty good at breaking that typical heuristic. It doesn't really make things untraceable. It doesn't hide the amount necessarily, but it heavily obscures exactly the source of funds and where it's going. So Payjoin's pretty cool, and it can also be used in other applications and not just strictly for privacy. You can use Payjoin to heavily reduce fees. So if you want, you can have a couple parties. Like let's say fees are really high, $20, $40, and you want to avoid paying a lot. You could have two parties take part in a Payjoin transaction where they can send to their needed destination, but both people are part of the transaction, so you pay effectively half fees if it's two people. So when this is enabled, this will be enabled in a very soon update coming in the next week or so. Payjoin will just be something that you'll be able to enable from the privacy settings. You'll just open the menu, you'll tap on privacy, you'll turn on Payjoin. At some point, we'll actually enable this by default. So if you were to tap receive on Bitcoin, it's automatically going to have Payjoin QR code. And there'll be an option just to copy your Payjoin URL right from there. And if the client you're using doesn't support Payjoin, it will automatically just switch to the standard SegWit address instead.
If you want, I can also.
Oh, thank you. I have
Okay.
So using Payjoin is also really easy. There's nothing really you have to do. All you do is just scan the Payjoin QR code. And as you can see on the transaction screen, you'll have an incoming Payjoin. There is some communication the wallet has to do with the other client that's taking part in the Payjoin. That all happens in the background. And as you can see, the transaction details, I had a successful Payjoin. And by doing that, I heavily reduced the knowledge, the easily to gain knowledge about exactly what happened in that transaction. So Payjoin is really easy to use, and it's not going to cause any higher cost for fees. Fees will be the same. So CoinJoin is a little different than Payjoin. CoinJoin's more like mixing funds, where a lot of people will take their outputs and then put them in a single transaction and spread it back out. CoinJoin can be a lot more expensive, especially depending on network conditions and how high the fees are. And you also end up paying a coordinator fee. However, CoinJoin is non-custodial, so you're not sending your funds to some central coordinator that's owning your funds, basically. CoinJoin can be decentralized, and it is non-custodial. However, it is very easy to tell that a coin join is happening. They're very detectable on chain. And oftentimes what will happen is that you'll use maybe a particular mixing service, or you'll use coin join, and your wallet will become tainted because some services will decide to censor coin join transactions. So that's something just to be aware of versus Payjoin. Payjoin's very hard to detect if it's actually happening on chain, but CoinJoin, not quite as much. It's much easily detectable. And then, of course, I mentioned coin control earlier. Coin control is just a really simple way to separate your outputs, keep them separate from each other. And Cake Wallet does make this really easy. From the send screen, if you are sending a transaction, you have an option to use coin control. You can select or deselect, and you can freeze outputs. That way you don't accidentally spend ones together that you weren't trying to. And then, of course, there are privacy chains. Privacy chains can be used to temporarily hold your funds for a while, so that maybe you swap some Bitcoin into Monero, you leave it in there for a while. Obviously, don't swap exactly this same amount in and then out immediately on the same day. That's probably easy to detect. But if you want to like really separate your funds or the source of funds for your Bitcoin, you can definitely utilize privacy chains like Monero by moving a lot of Bitcoin into Monero, keeping it there for a while, and then when you actually want to spend it as Bitcoin, or if you want to reinvest into Bitcoin, you can move it out. And that'll really help you. Once again, not a silver bullet. There's a lot of nuances here. There's a lot of other things you can do to potentially screw up your privacy, but that is a very good way to separate the source of funds from your Bitcoin. So once again, we're reviewing the Bitcoin privacy checklist. Obviously, avoiding KYC is a no-brainer, but easier said than done. If you do need to use KYC exchanges, there are ways to try and separate the source of funds from your Bitcoin. Address reusing, of course. You can use silent payments to do that, and also utilizing Payjoin. Unfortunately, silent payments and Payjoin don't work together yet, but they probably will, hopefully in the future, which would be a really cool combo. It'd be a very powerful combo together. And using coin control, using silent payments, and of course also Lightning. I didn't really touch that much on Lightning. Lightning can definitely provide some privacy for the receiver, the sender. It has good sender privacy. The receiver, however, does not have as good privacy. And there are a lot of kind of other issues with Lightning. It's not quite as easy as simple to use as Bitcoin L1, especially non-custodial. Non-custodial Lightning's a bit complicated and can be hard for people to use. However, there are new features for Lightning like route blinding coming out that'll make Lightning a lot more private by default. And of course, don't be afraid to lean on the privacy chains. Maybe you're a Bitcoin maxi, but even privacy chains can help you make your Bitcoin more private if you just want to end up primarily investing and staying in Bitcoin. More privacy considerations to be had. Obviously, if you want to use Bitcoin and stay really private, you can use things like network level privacy, using Tor and VPNs for connecting to nodes. You can be using your own node, which is, I know, something that a lot of people probably do to maintain a certain level of privacy using Bitcoin. Non-custodial, of course, so Cake Wallet is non-custodial, and Cake Wallet so far is the only wallet that does support silent payments. You can send to a silent payments address from Blue Wallet. You can't receive. Only Cake Wallet lets you receive silent payments so far. Air-gapped wallets, you can use air-gapped wallets. You can use multi-factor authentication. Cake Wallet does have a TOTP 2FA setting, so you can enable 2FA on Cake Wallet before doing certain actions. And of course, keep your software up to date. Keep your operating systems, keep your wallets up to date. Avoid, exploits that are easily avoidable and bugs and all that stuff. But with that being said, I will transition into Henry. He's going to talk about the more general privacy, keeping your digital life more private using operating systems, browsers, open source software, all that stuff. Yeah.
Thanks, Tux. Let me make sure this works. So who here likes privacy? I know it's a Bitcoin conference, but raise your hand if you're into privacy. Okay, so we already have a lot of people here who care about privacy. So this is more of a getting started, and I'll try to touch on some advanced concepts as well. But broadly, I haven't seen enough discussions about privacy in the Bitcoin community. And it's interesting because Cake Wallet, we all kind of came from the privacy community. And we started as a Monero wallet, and we've been trying to bring some of the things we like about Monero into other chains because it would make those tools more resilient. And so why should you care about privacy, even if all you care about is Bitcoin? Privacy outside of Bitcoin will still make your Bitcoin more private. That's the first thing. If you're running operating systems that could theoretically be scanning something or put you in jeopardy, make it easier for someone to steal your funds, that's not good for your Bitcoin. Privacy is a human right. A lot of the reasons why we use Bitcoin is because we think it's people first money, people first technology. And part of that is also privacy and making sure that people can transact with the freedom they need. And that's the same thing, and that's the third point. You can't really have freedom without privacy. If people know what you're doing and they can shut it down and you don't have resilience, then you can't even use tools like Bitcoin. So we need to make sure that there are privacy tools accessible to everybody out there. Now, it sounds like a lot of people have done privacy, so you know this can be a huge rabbit hole, and you can spend probably the amount of time that you could spend doing a full-time job making yourself as private as you want online. So I wanted to just kind of focus on the most bang for your buck, very bare minimum things that most people can do that won't cost them that much at the end of the day in terms of time, in terms of money and resources. So we're going to go through browsers, communication, operating systems, financial tools like Bitcoin, Monero, et cetera, and then other software to kind of give you a guideline of what to look for when you're picking out how to store your photos online, how to pick a new service, how to see if something's private and secure, and that way you have a framework to move forward. So browsers, I'm sure everyone has their favorite browser and they will die on the hill that their browser's the best, but generally the most common ones that you'll see out there, you're going to see people use Brave. Brave is very pro-crypto. And Mullvad browsers comes from the VPN company Mullvad. They're Swedish, and they have a very long, solid history in the privacy community. Molvad browser will be a little bit harder to use if you've never used a privacy browser before. Some sites won't work, a lot of technologies might not work, but everybody should try these browsers and just see how they work. It's costs you nothing to do, they're free to try. LibreWolf is almost like Molvad, but it's like from a different little community project. Firefox, I know, can be a little bit polarizing, but if you're coming from Chrome, I still think Firefox is a great alternative to Chrome. And then there's Tor browser as well, which has a very big name in the privacy community. And I personally like to use multiple browsers. So embrace multiple browsers, try them out, see where one might be better than others. Maybe one you use to stay logged into your accounts, and another one you keep Tor on there just to do regular web searches. So take advantage of multiple privacy tools, see what works best for you, and that's typically what we're going to suggest. And all of us in Cake Wallet use different browsers all the time for different things that we enjoy. And if you have friends, the best thing you can do, and if you use Chrome or you have to use Chrome, just install uBlock Origin. That's like an easy thing to make anybody more private and make their lives a little bit better. And it's also an ad blocker, it blocks trackers, it makes the web a lot nicer to use. Does anyone use uBlock? Yeah, there we go. You guys know what I'm talking about. Now, the next thing is communication. So if you need to share a seed with someone, let's say you're trying to set up a shared wallet with someone. I wouldn't recommend doing this, but that's a really niche use case that really has to stress test the security of a tool that you use to communicate. So the first thing that we need to look for communication goals is it has to be usable. If you have to tell someone to connect to some custom node and download, pick a client, set up a custom node, oh, you got to spin up your own server and then we can communicate, that's probably not going to be something you can use for a lot of people. So you have to find something that's usable for you. Maybe all your friends are that technical and you guys do want to spin something up. So it's all about you and the people you're communicating with. Look for something usable, look for something with end-to-end encryption, look for something that tries to reduce metadata so that they can't see who's talking to who, at what time, what kind of file contents are being sent between the two people. And also look for something that tries to limit identifiers. They don't need an email, a phone number, you don't need to upload a driver's license to send a message to someone else. So just try to look for something that minimizes that. And also always have a backup communication platform. Even massive companies like Meta deal with outages on Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. So if it happens to Meta, it can happen to other smaller projects as well. Really just simple list. There's a million great options out there. The most common ones for email are ProtonMail and Tuda. A lot of people like them. They're probably some of the most usable privacy and security-oriented email providers. You can set up forwarding for them as well, so you can always set one up and have it forward to your regular inbox. You're going to lose some privacy doing that, but if you just want to test it out and just see if it works for you, it's a good way to transition to them slowly. And also Signal is very popular, and we all know about Signalgate. So Signal's great, assuming you don't add in people that aren't supposed to be in the group chat. And Session has the same limitation as Signal there, as well as SimpleX. So that's a universal rule. Try all these out. See what works for you. Session and SimpleX are a little bit more decentralized than Signal, but they're probably a little bit less usable for the normal person. So just try them all out. Operating systems can be tough. I would not put operating systems as the first thing for anybody to switch because it's a lot of work to move between operating systems. But for desktop operating systems, we have Linux, which obviously is kind of the gold standard. And if you've ever been in this community, a lot of people will use Linux. And I'm sure some laptops right now are already running Linux in front of me. Ubuntu is a great place to start. Fedora, Arch, it doesn't really matter. Most of them have better privacy out of the box. They give you more ownership of your software. They're open source. So there's a lot of distro wars out there. Just pick a distro that clicks with you. Mac OS and the Apple ecosystem, I think everyone at Cake Wallet's a little bit conflicted, and we have some people who switch back and forth, and we have some interesting discussions behind the scenes. But we're all kind of in agreement that it's not the worst place to be, especially if you're using some privacy and security tools in the Apple ecosystem. It's probably not the best place, but it's better than being on like Windows, generally speaking. So on mobile, you have Android custom operating systems like Graphene OS and Calyx OS. So just really try to play around with different operating systems. If you have an old device that you don't use anymore, just spin something up. Play around with it, see if it works for you. You might be surprised at how much you can do on an old device. You can use virtual machines. If you have a Mac OS device, there's something called Parallels. It's a virtual machine software. You can run Linux at like almost full speed on Parallels, especially if you have a newer MacBook. So just things to play around with. As for financial stuff, we kind of embrace a multi-crypto approach because, well, we really like Monero's privacy, but Monero's banned in certain countries. So like, how can that person still use Monero if Monero's banned? Well, if they're able to buy Bitcoin, they can exchange it for Monero inside our app, and it's non-custodial. So you get to own it, and it's resilient. So because we embrace multiple cryptocurrencies, we can have a more resilient cryptocurrency ecosystem for everybody. So for crypto, we like Monero. We also like Bitcoin, especially if you're using it with privacy tools, then you're getting a lot of benefit. Litecoin MWeb is something that we're really excited about. It adds a lot of privacy to Litecoin, and that is something we've already done. Zcash is also great as well. And we just generally say avoid custodial exchanges. That's typically the #1 thing to try to avoid. And then if you are, on Amazon or you want to buy something online and they don't take crypto, they don't take Bitcoin, there's still other non-crypto options. See if you can go to a store locally, use cash. That's a great way to have some privacy right there. I call it crypto with extra steps. So like we try to make it as fewer steps as possible, but we have things like CakePay where you can send Bitcoin and get Visa gift cards, and you can use those Visa gift cards online. So you're still kind of going through fiat, but it's funded with crypto behind the scenes, and you can still get a lot of privacy from that because you can use those cards and it can be tied to kind of whatever information you want to give. And there's also alternatives to CakePay. There's a lot of like gift card options online that you can use and exchange crypto for gift cards. Privacy.com is another option. They are KYC. It's not an anonymous service, but it does allow you to essentially generate cards for hundreds of websites rather than you giving your actual credit card number to hundreds of websites and trusting all of them with your information. You can just give it to privacy.com and they'll generate card numbers for every single website for you. If any of you are European, Revolut is like kind of the European alternative to privacy.com. So those are kind of the main places to start. So just to kind of recap, financial stuff, like make sure your finances are private. This is the last one, but just recapping before I touch on the last one. Financials, let me just go back. Operating systems, communication, and browsers. And of course, we can go into search engines, we can go into document editing, we can go into cloud storage, but they're all gonna kind of fall into the same category here, which is how you're able to go and find what is actually private yourself. So I really love alternative2.net. You can put in, let's say, Google into alternative2.net. It's gonna give you tons of different search engines. When you find those search engines, some things to look for. Okay, search engines is, let's say, a cloud provider, like an alternative to Google Drive. Look for something open source. Typically, projects are generally disincentivized to be open source. They're passing up proprietary code that they can monetize. And when they're making it open source, they're making a huge sacrifice for the community. It's because they care about their code being transparent. It's because they probably care a lot more about privacy. And you're actually able to try to verify what they do. Most people, like let's admit, we don't go and analyze open source software ourselves to verify it's doing what it does, but it's the commitment from the developer that really demonstrates that they care about you and your data and transparency. Try to have end-to-end encryption, or in the context of like cloud storage, zero knowledge. This means that a server like Google Drive, or not Google Drive, but like Proton, for example, has Proton Drive. They can't see what your data actually is. It's encrypted on your device, it goes to their server, and all they have is encrypted data on their server. So even if someone taps on them and says, hey, we need information from this account, theoretically they can serve you like a malicious key, but without getting into like the technical details, they can't just give over data you've already uploaded because it's encrypted by the time it touches them. So try to use trustless software that's designed so that they have as little of your data as possible. History is also super important, and it's something that I don't see talked about enough. Data breaches happen all the time. Responses to data breaches are really telling. How often they happen is really telling, and the severity of the data breach is really telling. So kind of look across the board, try to look at the history of projects, see how they responded, see if they actually mitigated the concerns, and also see how long they've been around. If a project's only been around for 6 months and you don't really know what's going on, and maybe you don't know if it's gonna last another 6 months and you're moving all your data to it, just be cautious with things like that. Look at teams. Public teams typically are better. They're putting themselves out there. Look for good privacy policies. TOSDR, should have put this on there, TOSTR, Terms of Service Didn't Read, is a great website where you can put in a link to a lot of services and it'll actually too long didn't read the privacy policy for you and give you like an A or a B or a C ranking, and it'll tell you the kind of data it collects. And I believe they have an extension that you can use that actually automatically does it for each site. So really cool project. And then just kind of avoid general red flags, right? Like this is just kind of human intuition. Look for typos, look for like broken links, that kind of stuff. Just watch out for common red flags in software. And just to kind of speak to some examples of like going through this, we have services like Auth for multi-factor authentication. I think everybody should have an MFA app. It's a great way to keep your crypto more secure. We don't recommend custodial exchanges, but if you're using a custodial exchange, please keep it as secure as you can. Have MFA set up on the account. Auth is a good example. It's open source. They have a public team. They have a great track record, a great privacy policy. You can use it offline as well, so they don't force you into a cloud option. They actively build in features that are privacy and security respecting. So it's just one example of how you can tell where the commitments are for a project. Security keys are great. Same with password managers. Those three there are all open source, and they're very like user first. Aliasing as well is a great place to start. I think one of the most powerful things any of you can do today if you leave is set up an aliasing service so that when you're registering for a new provider, you don't have to give your email to 50 different websites. If you're signing up, let's say, for a newsletter, like a news outlet, you can generate an email alias just for that news outlet. And then if they start bombarding you and the unsubscription button just doesn't work, and then it's like, what the hell, I unsubscribed from them and they still keep emailing me. You just shut down the alias. You don't need to ditch your whole email account now. So it's a great way to deal with spam, and there's lots of usability benefits as well. But as I said earlier, we all come from a privacy background. Tux came from a privacy background. I came from a privacy background. Seth for Privacy's on our team. He's not here at the conference, but he comes from a privacy background. So you can ask us at any point, any kind of privacy questions, and we'd love to be there. But I hope this was a good breakdown, and we'd love to answer any questions for you guys. And check us out.